Welcome to the Soma sessions. This is a space for embodied healing and truth telling. Today's episode, we are talking about healing. Healing is messy. And we're going to set some intentions with today's episode and just kind of talk a bit about that journey, that road of healing. So today's intention for us is to show up even though healing is messy. So we're going to start off this episode with just taking a soft breath together. Wherever you're at, whether you're listening to this sitting down, listening to this while you're driving, or just, at your desk at work, just taking a brief second just to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Just going to take one more deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Very purposeful. So one of the things as we jump into the episode, healing is messy. A lot of times when clients come to me, they are ready to feel better. They have something going on. It feels uncomfortable. It's a lot of changes, and they're just wanting to feel better. In today's society, we have a lot of quick fixes. It's like, take the Tylenol, the headache subsides. You're feeling stressed, take a drink, that kind of dulls it or numbs it. And so we're used to having situations where something feels uncomfortable and we fix it. We address it. We problem solve it. The issue is that healing isn't really about fixing anything. It's about being able to tune in and listen. Because healing is not this linear approach where it's like 2 + 2 = 4. Well, 3 + 1 also equals 4. 5 - 1 = 4. 9 - 5 = 4. And so does 2 × 2. So there's so many different ways to approach the thing that you feel like you desire. And there's so many different ways to approach the thing that you need. A huge part of healing is about listening to your inner voice, listening to your body. A lot of times our body is giving us signals that something is about to go haywire, something's about to glitch, things aren't right. Things are boiling beneath the surface that you need to address. And a lot of times our healing can be activated when we're listening, healing conversations with others. But those things are all pretty difficult. They're not, it's much easier said than done. And so, for instance, in communication, you're communicating with the loved one. You want to be heard. You want the things that you say to matter. You want your feelings to matter. You want all of those things to really make a difference to the other person. And we want to get something off of our chest, off of our hearts, off of our minds. We don't always think about the other person, and because they're the other part of the conversation. If you didn't want feedback, right, you could just go talk to the wall. You could post up at the wall and just say all those things and get them off your heart and off your mind, and then go on about your business. But the reality is, when you're having a conversation with another person, they are allowed to respond, not react, which happens in a lot of situations, but respond. And that's where we have the trouble, because so often we feel like, well, what I'm saying is like, that's it. What happens in conversation, especially in basic conversation that we're having with others, and especially with the way that the world is kind of, our minds have kind of adapted, is because we have we have this stage, right? You have things like social media and just all these different platforms where you are able to stand at the platform and say whatever you want to say, and you can turn off comments. You can hide comments, you can hide the likes. So you literally are speaking into the echo chamber, and without having anybody to challenge that thought or challenge that belief. The thing with challenging thoughts and beliefs is it's not a space of aggression. It's a space of holding a mirror up and saying, you know what? I heard your reality. I heard your perspective. Now here's another space. Here's another perspective. This is just as valid. Where is the middle ground? That's where healthy conversation comes in. Healthy conversation also involves just straight up acknowledging the truth. There are personal truths, and then there's actual valid fact. And so getting and this can be a totally separate, I think this may even need to be a totally separate episode. But healing means that we have to listen sometimes to the things that make us uncomfortable. You have to listen to the fact that, maybe your beliefs were very judgmental and that they attacked somebody, and the way that that came out of your mouth to them personified that judgment. Healing is understanding that sometimes you have to just kind of put everything on the table, and there may not be a concrete solution at the moment. Maybe that step right then is just the simple acknowledgement that this is the space that we're in. This is why we have to understand that healing is not linear. It's not like this direct path. Sometimes it takes detours. It's this winding road. Sometimes you have to go off to one space in order to learn something about yourself, and then come back and say, oh, like, I've expanded this part of myself, and then I come back over here and I can add this now to this space. So that's what becomes difficult a lot of times, because clients will come to me and they'll want something very immediate. I felt uncomfortable, and, or this is a huge one, for instance, all of us develop coping skills. Sometimes those coping skills aren't actually, they're actually pretty dysfunctional. But it's the way you've been coping forever. It's the way you've been communicating forever. And sometimes us being us, it gets us to a point, like some of those things actually worked for us. And then sometimes you enter into a situation where those very things don't work, right? They don't work. And so they're challenged, and that can make people feel really uncomfortable. Now, depending on the situation, people will say, you know what, that's fine. I don't even want to deal with the situation. And they'll leave the situation alone so they can continue to go back over here and be themselves in a way that has worked for them. But sometimes that situation, you're like, I don't want to leave. It's a job, it's a love relationship, it's a friendship. I don't want to leave that. How can I work with this situation? And that's where some healing comes into play, where you learn how to listen better. You learn how to work with the other person better. You learn how to pull out that complementary side of yourself and say, you know what? I've been carrying this all this time, and this is always the way I've reacted to things. But there have been plenty of times where me reacting like that didn't work, but I was willing to walk away from those situations. I've brought that same behavior to this situation, but I want this situation more. So, how can I look at the way that I typically react and make some changes? That's where healing is such a curvy, winding road, because there's so much you can learn from those situations, and you have to be open. That's part of healing being messy, is that you have to actually be open. Not everybody's open. Some people are just like stuck and that's who they're going to be, and they may not even be all the way comfortable with that, but they choose that versus making some changes and digging deep and touching those vulnerable portions of themselves, and wading through the messiness of healing. When it comes to understanding too, the body doesn't lie when it comes to healing. So somatic wise, there are some things that happen within the body that we start to see. This is where, for instance, you can have panic attacks and go to the hospital, and they're not going to find like this specific thing. They may see that your heart rate increased or your blood pressure spiked, but those things will go back down to normal after the panic attack subsides, right? And so the body is constantly begging for this safe space to speak. And we'll find, sometimes that's that space where someone comes around you and their energy is vexing to you, and the hair on your arm may raise, or you might find yourself clenching your jaw more. Your hands may tense up around this person. The body doesn't lie. And so that's a huge part of healing as well, is to understand and acknowledge what your body is saying to yourself. Do you want to get up and walk away from that situation when that person and their energy is coming? This is why it gets kind of complicated, because we have to start to ground ourselves a bit and tune in to what is actually occurring at that point in time. One of the things that I do for grounding is called a gasho meditation. This is something that I definitely learned from yoga and from Reiki. And this is what it looks like to be in gasho meditation. It's prayer pose, right? You sitting down, as we used to call it, crisscross applesauce, with your legs crossed and your hands in prayer pose at your chest. And as you can see by the picture here, if you guys are watching this, but with your hands at your chest there in prayer pose, that is a great way to just bring your energy back to the heart space. Sometimes it's all frazzled and it's scrambled everywhere. Just bringing it back to the heart space, you can almost feel it pulse between your hands. So I like to do just even 1 minute sitting in gasho. Doing that that soft breath that we did in the very beginning. So hands at the heart and prayer pose, just taking that soft breath in through the nose. You just hold it for a moment and out through the mouth like you're blowing out a candle. That steady stream. Even if you sit like this just for the beat of that one breath, it's a space of grounding and pulling you back to a space of focus so you can have more clarity. You can think before you speak. You feel stressed out. You feel your mind just going a lot of different places. Just breathing like that, hands in prayer pose. You can do that standing up. You can stop in the hallway real quick and do that. Just to think before you speak. So you're more intentional about what you're about to say or how you're about to handle something. That's part of that healing journey, right? Because today's intention is to show up even though healing is messy. Showing up means that I'm not going to walk away from the situation. I'm going to just pause for a moment, gather myself, and make a good decision for what it is that I feel like I need to do. Yoga and Reiki have been a huge game changer for me where all of that is concerned. Yoga has taught me to sit through the discomfort. When you're on that mat, sometimes those poses, one of the things that you're taught is to listen to your body. If your body puts up a wall and says, nope, you can't do the pose that way, there are always variations of doing the pose. And so you feel the discomfort, right? But you don't run from it, you adjust, right? Sometimes on the mat, you kind of tap out and there's that space where you can hear your mental chatter telling you, you can sit down, you don't have to finish this, but you work through that. And you say, no, I committed to this time. I committed to this practice in this space. I can adjust, right? And so if downward dog feels a lot on your body, it may be because you need to adjust the pose. So you're not putting all of the weight in your hands, right? A lot of times with those balance poses, you can see your body trying to adjust. And so you may not be able to hold your leg up as high in the tree pose. Maybe your leg has to be a little lower this time. And then you also understand that when we do balance exercises in yoga, you work one side of the body and then you work the other side of the body. You may find that one side of the body is tighter and the other side is more forgiving. Yoga's taught me to work through that and not just get to that discomfort and let it be a wall that makes me stop and turn around and go home. It's like, no, listen to your body. Your body said that today, this part is a no in this side, but what else can you do? Because you're here committed to the practice. Reiki has taught me with healing the importance of sitting still and listening. So a lot of Reiki is that quiet space of connection. What happens? What comes up in that space of connection? This is why a lot of people have trouble being by themselves. They always need to have some white noise or some chatter or something going on. And a lot of times that clouds your judgment, that clouds your space, and it clouds your intuition. So how can you find these spaces of stillness and listening? The journal prompt for this episode, I want you to look at what part of healing feels uncomfortable and messy for you right now. I don't want you to problem solve that. I just want you to acknowledge what part of your healing journey, what part of your everyday living right now feels uncomfortable and messy. And I want you to resist the urge to problem solve that. I want you just to acknowledge it and be able to sit in the discomfort of that, because you have to be able to feel that. And I want you to write down what feelings and emotions and thoughts come up when you acknowledge those uncomfortable and messy parts. I want you to talk about and write down those emotions. That's a purge that's necessary. It could be a brain dump that's necessary. And then afterwards, I want you to write down how it felt to walk through that process. So as we wrap up this episode, I want you just to come back to Gasho. We're going to do a little grounding and do that soft breath technique. So hands at prayer pose at the heart. I'm going to take a soft breath. Breathe in through the nose together. And out through the mouth like you're blowing out that candle. Steady stream. I'm going to take another soft breath in through the nose and out like that candle. And then you're going to take one last breath in, prayer pose, hands at the heart, feeling that energy just start to calm through the nose and hold it. 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale, breathing out in that steady stream. If today's episode resonated with you today, I want you to stick with me in the Soma sessions, because this space isn't about perfection. It's about the presence of showing up for yourself. Remember that healing is messy. It's not linear. It is this winding road. And sometimes you'll have to take some detours so you can find yourself, explore pieces of yourself, and expand. I want to know what resonated with you in this episode. You can comment below if you're watching this on Healing Through Sacred Writing. You can email me at 3llovelightlucid@gmail.com. Until next time, remember that healing is not a linear path. It is a winding road. And healing, the journey itself, can be messy. Remember to learn to sit through your discomfort, and remember that there's value in listening to what your body is saying, what your heart and your mind is saying in the stillness. Thank you for joining me today in the Soma sessions, the space of embodied healing and truth telling.